The Oracle Network.
Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike, and my co-host...
JT. Hi, everybody.
How's it going at the end of November?
The end of November, all of November, we've been prepping for December. It's like we're a really shitty big box company that wants to put out Christmas early.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, like British Columbia has just been rain, like more rain than has ever dropped on this province.
Listen, you can go for a lot of world records or Canadian records, but you really shouldn't go for that one.
Yeah. The most highways closed by mudslides.
Y'all, listen, if you haven't checked out Canada lately, or correction, British Columbia, like they decided without anybody knowing about it that they really aspired to be Hawaii. And so they've knocked out every road connecting them everywhere else.
Just luckily we're not using lava.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a little more... I mean, you could play a mean game of floor is lava.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess that's what the kids are playing these days. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean...
I'd break something.
In a weekend, we had more rain than most Novembers, so...
Has there been any reports on, bad things happening due to the floods? Like, any kind of toll?
There's been thousands of animals dead because they couldn't get them out of the barns and everything. Mudslide wise, I think there's been 3 bodies now pulled out of mudslides.
Ugh.
There's another huge storm starting tonight, which is in the past now. And then it'll go for the next couple days, and then another storm behind it to bring a bunch more rain. The flooding is still rampant in Abbotsford. It's still buried underwater in the Sumas Prairie, which was once a lake 100 years ago. So maybe that's not where you want to put farmland.
No, I mean, the moral of the story is where the fuck was Noah?
No shit.
That's all I'm saying.
No shit. Well, I mean, they cleared one of the highways and got it moving again, and then it re-washed out. So,
oh man,
yeah, it's been a fun time in BC.
I can't imagine being that guy or that group that works so hard to clear a road, and then they come back and they're just
another
like
mudslide.
What the ultimate flip table moment? Just like,
yep,
I'm done, guys.
And now we're rationing gas, which is fun too.
You said 30 liters. Right?
Yeah, 30 liters or almost 8 gallons per fill-up max.
Yeah, and for any American car, that's like not
a lot.
Not a full tank at all.
The only people that can break that are first responders or like truck drivers and stuff to get things moving.
I mean, appropriately so.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
How's the weather over in Virginia?
It's a little here and there. I think last week it hit in the 70s, and this week it's like in the 30s. So it's Virginia weather, We got the leaves changing. I just freaking blew and raked 1 billion of them. But it's like I say, at least they're my trees, because the last house I lived in had no trees on the property, and yet I still got everybody else's leaves. So
son of a gun.
Son of a gun.
Well, this episode is not going to be about Virginia or British Columbia.
Nope.
It's not. It's going to be about the province of Newfoundland and Labrador in the Maritimes, very east coast of Canada.
All the way east.
All the way east. And now they don't deal with what we've been dealing with here, which is the atmospheric rivers, which has been fun.
Mm-hmm.
But they do end up dealing with the tropical storms from Florida and stuff every once in a while. So they get weather too.
Well, Florida has to fuck you guys up too.
It's true.
They mess up the states every day.
I think it was last year they actually had a hurricane that came through. It was downgraded to a tropical storm, but I think it still hit and dropped tons of snow. So
Of course it did. Oh
my God. It was a late, late fall, kind of early winter hurricane. So yeah,
that's like it's like falling in it. I think this is another comedian's joke. It's like falling down a trapdoor and then ending in like a pile of marshmallows. It's like you'd only be so mad. It's like a hurricane that comes through and delivers snow. It's like,
it caused lots of problems.
I'm sure.
Buried people.
I'm sure. But in a perfect world, it was lovely.
Of course.
This ain't a perfect world.
No, it's not. That's why we have a true crime podcast.
Accurate.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, that's a lovely segue.
Yes. So I'm going to start this episode. The title of my case is Stalking and Murder, the tale of Shirley Jane Turner and her victims. And the beer pairing for this episode, it's actually not the name of the beer that's the pairing. It's the name of the brewery. Apex Predator Brewing.
Oh, God. Listen, it better be a hella good beer with a name like Apex Predator.
Yeah, this is their Black Spruce Porter. And that's actually not their original name. I'm blanking here on what their name was, but they had a cease and desist and had to rebrand.
It was Kanye.
Of course. So this actually is from the province of Alberta, next door, from the Yellowhead County. It's not even in a town. It's just like in a small little
it's like a non-incorporated
kind of thing.
Hamlet.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere. But they're crushing it with their beers there. This porter is a 5.8% alcohol beer, and it says very little other than Black Spruce Porter.
It's like taste and see.
Mm-hmm.
Here it comes out of the bottle.
Can. So it's a seriously dark beer. It's darker than most porters that I see these days. Nice brown head.
So dark I lost my identity in there.
The blacklist.
Yes.
It's a really, really nice roasty nose. It's almost got like a coffee thing going on. Yeah, just roast and coffee. Maybe a little earthiness. Definitely like sort of that roasted malt, kind of burnt malt, maybe burnt coffee. There's no cream in that coffee. This is just like straight up roast.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say the thing that's hard for me with porters that taste like coffee a lot of times is that they also taste sweet. And I drink coffee black. I don't add anything in my coffee. So I'd rather, question my life decisions when I drink it.
Yeah, this is just straight up. It's just earthy, roasty, bitter coffee. It's a nice beer.
That's the beer for me.
Whoop, whoop. All right. Well, this Apex Predator is not for you.
Oh.
Yeah. Shirley Jane Turner was born on January 28th, 1961, to a father that was in the U.S. military and a mother from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Okay.
So you had that whole dual citizenship thing going on?
Yep.
She would be raised with siblings down in Wichita, Kansas. So, military brat thing going on.
I empathize.
Yeah. As happens often enough, her parents would separate and the kids would head back to Canada to live in Newfoundland.
God, that's far away.
Yeah. She seemed to have a pretty uneventful upbringing, as there's little to no information on her childhood. I do know that in the 1980s, she would begin her journey to become a doctor.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Respectable profession.
Yeah, you'd think. She would get into the Memorial University in St. John's. Shirley would marry a longtime boyfriend during her winter break from school in 1981. The couple would have a son, and her husband would raise him as a stay-at-home dad so that she could continue with her school.
Good on him.
She would move away to Labrador City to work as a science teacher for 2 years, and during that time give birth to a daughter.
Okay.
There was talk of infidelity on her part, and the marriage would end on January 29th, 1988, and then she would marry the man she was rumored to have cheated with.
Oh, well, at least she followed through.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose.
I usually would not mention the infidelity, but I think it really ties into this case, and it kind of goes to her character a little bit.
Okay. Sure.
Turner would have custody of her 2 children from the first marriage, And this new marriage would bring another daughter into the picture on March 8th, 1990.
All right.
The couple would have a boarder stay with them in October of 1993, and he would confide in his therapist that he had seen Shirley abuse her children both emotionally and physically, with the physical side being spanking and beatings with belts.
It was the 90s, not the 70s.
Yeah, but
or the 60s.
When you go with beatings with belts, not just,
Yeah, the language utilized is, yeah. You do have to key in on that for sure.
The children would say that she was the disciplinarian in the house. The abuse case would be closed in January of 1994 without even an interview with Shirley somehow. Yeah, really.
There are so many cases that I've written about where people just kind of ignore the stuff, and it just gets worse and worse and worse.
During this time, though, she would finish her undergraduate degree. Things were not happy in the house, though, and they would divorce only 3 years later. She would be given custody of their daughter, but she would change her mind and dump the daughter with her ex.
Fuck. Abandonment.
Yeah.
That's... Oh, Jesus.
Just wait. She would also get rid of her other 2 children by sending them to their paternal grandparents.
It's like, I'll see you guys later. Mommy's got to go to Atlantic City. Fuck you all. Bye.
It would come out that Shirley had been taking baby bonuses for her children from 1982, possibly all the way to 2000, and this money was to go towards their college funds, but she spent all the money on her own good.
Oh, imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
She offloads them, doesn't report it, and then she uses that money.
Yeah. 1998 would see her finish her medical degree, and she would spend 98 to 2000 as a resident physician at many teaching hospitals across Newfoundland. Things were not all peachy with her, though, as her supervising physician was quoted as saying she was quite hostile, yelling, crying, and accusing me of treating her unfairly. She would miss 9 days of work in a 3-month rotation at one doctor's office and was caught falsifying charts.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and you might through the story, but it sounds like she's got a real victim kind of a concept to her, where if something doesn't go right, it's somebody else's problem, and she got like the worst end of it every time.
She's got lots going on.
Oh, right.
Yeah. The supervising physician was quoted as saying, "I feel I was being manipulated whenever I spoke to Shirley Turner. When negative items would come up, she would change the topic to one of my failings. She would be charming, friendly, and lively when caught in an untruth. She would become angry, accusatory, and loud. I always felt Shirley Turner was putting on a show, as if she were playing the role but had no feeling for her work. I cannot recall a trainee like Shirley Turner in that her approach lacked personal commitment and her relationships with people seemed, at least to me, to be superficial when compared to the over 400 residents I have supervised in the past 21 years.
It really sounds like there is a lot of malice in her actions.
Yeah. So it's safe to say things were not going well in her career or her personal life, really.
Yeah. yeah. I think that's a safe assumption.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what they say about assumptions, but I feel like this is probably one of the best ones to make. Yeah.
Something that I have not mentioned yet is her cases of stalking that started in 1996. One Miles Doucette, who happened to be 13 years younger than her, who was a St. John resident, started dating her, but things were not going swimmingly, and he would move away to a different part of the province.
Oh, I'm just waiting for the rest of this story.
She would call him, and then just show up at his new location. She would get in an altercation with him, started by her, when she would hit him in the face with a high heel.
Okay, so there's an important distinction here. Was it a high heel or a stiletto?
Just a high heel, so I don't think it was a stiletto.
Right. We're going with the yeah.
Didn't say stab, said hit.
Yeah, I mean, she probably just like...
Yeah. So in 1998, he moved to Pennsylvania, and she would follow him down to stalk him there in the U.S.
The old Florida of the North.
He would be forced to call the cops on her many times to have her removed from his premises. She would try to commit suicide in front of his home in April 1999, but he would find her and call the ambulance, where they would pump her stomach and she would survive.
Here's the thing. I think if I was in his situation, I'd do the same thing.
Yeah.
In her head, it means he still cares about her.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't win on that regard. Oh, God.
So this is where her story is going to take a bit of a detour in the United States for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew David Bagby was born on September 25th, 1973 in Sunnyvale, California, to mother Kathleen Daphne Bagby, registered nurse and midwife, originally from the United Kingdom, and David Franklin Bagby, a former U.S. Navy serviceman.
Wow.
So another military family.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew would move to Newfoundland and attend Memorial University for his third year.
Okay.
It was while in Newfoundland that he would meet Shirley Jane Turner, and they would start to date.
Okay.
Yep. Things were destined to make their relationship a long-distance one. Shirley would end up moving to Sac City, Iowa to work for Trimac Physicians Corporation, something I have to assume happened as she was burning so many bridges back in Canada.
Yeah. If you're going to cause these issues and be out there like that, yeah, I would say that it was time to move on.
Yes. Andrew would graduate from Memorial University in May 2000 and take a surgical residency at the State University of New York, Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York. That is a long fucking name.
It is a long fucking name, and I guarantee you nobody on that campus calls it that.
You're not wrong, I'm sure.
This is where we're at. What's the name? Here.
University.
Yeah.
Andrew and Shirley would visit each other, but it mostly was Shirley heading to New York to visit him. Sometime in 2000, it is thought that Shirley may have broken into his house and stolen items, but this seems to be speculation.
Yet history tells us it fits like that last puzzle piece that just feels so good.
Yeah, it totally fits with the stalking issues, right?
Yeah.
Shirley would quit her job even though she had a 3-year contract, and she was still in the first year and moved to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and get a job at Allegiant Health System of Omaha, Nebraska.
All I can think of is like when things aren't going your way, and if you've been caught up in stalking, head to us, Iowa.
And work in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So this may sound weird to live in one state and work in another, but it is a 9-minute drive between the cities according to Google Maps. Mm-hmm. So it's not that big of a deal.
No.
Fall 2001 would see Andrew change jobs also, as he would move, but he would be off to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Supposedly it's a real place.
We did not make that up.
In October 2001, Shirley would buy a handgun and take up shooting lessons. It was in October that Shirley would claim that she was pregnant with Andrew's child, although she was not pregnant at all.
What, did she just throw a pillow in there? Like, how does that?
Well, when you first are pregnant, you don't really show, but...
Yeah, and I guess what? Would this be like
4.
The 4th child?
4, yeah.
Yeah. Although, let me just say this. I will say this, and this has only been in the circumstance of my wife. It's like the second child, and I'm a white dude. I know nothing about having a child. What I do know is that, like, it's seemingly with the second child on, your body knows what to do.
Yeah.
So it's just like, boom, here's the kid, and you show a lot quicker.
Could be, yeah.
That being said, timelines, who knows?
She would speak with him in person right after her last shooting lesson. The couple had separated sometime before this revelation, and he might have been seeing a new woman, as there seemed to be arguments about this fact quite a bit in October.
So she's trying to get him back by,
the baby, yeah.
Tale as old as time.
Beast and the guy. She would then come clean on November 3rd, 2001, that she was actually not pregnant, and she was hoping this would finally bring them back together.
There it is.
Yeah. This would backfire horribly for Shirley, though, and he would drive her to the Arnold Palmer Regional Airport and break up with her, sending her back home to Iowa.
She got broken up at an Arnold Palmer Regional Airport.
Yeah.
Like an airport hair care tire center. That's what.
Yeah, no doubt. November 4th would see Shirley phone Andrew multiple times. She did not like how things were going, though, so at 1 p.m. she hopped into her Toyota RAV4 and stuffed her gun into the glove box.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun on this one, but kind of know where this is going.
The drive from her home in Council Bluffs, Iowa, to his place in Pennsylvania took 16 hours and was 1,523 kilometers or 916 miles. This just might mean she didn't want people to know that she was back in Latrobe. Maybe. She would show up on Andrew's doorstep early in the morning and a confrontation would happen. Now, he worked at a clinic right across the street from his home, so he would head to work in a shitty mood.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. T. Clark Simpson, his supervisor, would ask him what was going on, and he would tell the story about Shirley. Simpson would tell him whatever he did, he should not meet with Shirley privately. Yes.
Smart.
Andrew would say he would think about it, but he would come over to Dr. Simpson's house later in the evening. Sadly, I'm pretty sure you can guess what happened next, as he never showed up at Dr. Simpson's house and was never heard from again.
Imagine that.
What would happen, though, would be that Shirley and Andrew would meet up, and it would seem like some sex might have been in the plans, as there was a box of condoms purchased by Andrew that will come up again.
A tad presumptuous, I might add.
He bought it, not her, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah. It was also proven that Shirley had used the computer inside Andrew's place on November 5th to use Hotmail and eBay. And she would have her cell phone pinged from the area also. Unfortunately, they would, for whatever reason, end up in the parking lot for Keystone State Park in Pennsylvania. It would be here that Shirley would pull out her gun and shoot Andrew 5 times between the face, chest, butt, and back of the head.
God damn.
Yeah. This was definitely a planned attack, as there was definite rage in this murder.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was also mentioned that they both had their vehicles at the park. Shirley would now rush back the 16 hours back home, where she would claim that she had been homesick instead of at work.
I mean, I guess you could follow that. There's a paper trail.
Yeah.
There always would be.
She must have felt that the walls were closing in after his body was found on November 6th, and the police would contact her right away. She would pack up her few possessions on November 12th, 2001, and hop onto a flight destined for Toronto, Ontario. So it's oh fuck, I'm out of the country. Bye.
Oh fuck, peace.
Yep. She would then make her way back to St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. She would begin living with her oldest son, as he had a place. Now, with Shirley fleeing the United States, the Pennsylvania State Police would get in touch with the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, RNC, and inform their intelligence unit of the case they were working on. The police would make a move and take her trash from her home on December 2nd, 2001. Here they would find ultrasounds that had been taken on November 29th that showed that she was actually now pregnant, and it would turn out to be Andrew's child. So that night, a conception happened.
Yeah, there was something that went on.
She would be arrested on December 12th, 2001, and at the time they would find a condom box that had been purchased in Pennsylvania by Andrew. The same day as her arrest, extradition hearings would begin in Newfoundland. When it comes to murder cases, these always get messy, as Canada will not send Canadians across the border if the death penalty is on the table, because we are a non-death penalty country.
Well, I mean, you just got to stick to what, you decide.
Canada abolished the death penalty in 1976, and we will not knowingly send out citizens away to die. We just won't.
But I appreciate that.
Well, we'll let them stay in jail for a very long time. That's okay. But we won't let them be murdered. In Canada's mind, the country should be better than the murderers.
Imagine that. Oh
they
my
should actually
God.
have to suffer, because if you let them die, they don't have to suffer anymore.
That's very true.
The judge in the extradition case would decide that even though she was accused of murder, she was not a threat to the public in Newfoundland, so she was released on $75,000 bail.
All right. Because she's not a flight risk.
Yeah, well, not going to probably leave the country, because where is she going to go? The States? There were some conditions of this bail, though, as she had to give over her passport and would have to have weekly visits with the RNC. She was also not permitted to leave the area. The last condition, she was not able to contact the Bagby family.
Good condition.
Her bail would be paid by a former coworker from Memorial University named Dr. John Bousset. Now, of course, when the word came out that Shirley was pregnant, this turned not only into an extradition case, but also a serious child custody case. Andrew's parents, Kathleen and David, would move from California to St. John's, Newfoundland for this fight.
Holy
Yeah.
crap. I mean, good on them.
Zachary would be born on July 18th, 2002, and Shirley would not let the grandparents see the boy because she claimed she feared that they would abduct the child.
Everybody else is the bad person but her.
Now, her lawyer was not in agreement, as he saw Kathleen and David as good influences on Zachary. Shirley didn't seem like she was much of a parent either, as Zachary really didn't seem to have much of a connection to her, but he did with his grandparents. And he's little still, but wants to see those grandparents and not her.
I mean, that's she doesn't take rejection quite nicely, but I can tell you right now, like, I get it. My kids want to see, Gigi and Pap. They don't want to see Dad.
Or they want to see Mike on Zoom.
Every time we record.
November 2002 would see Shirley back in jail due to her extradition case. She would stay there until January 2003, when the same judge would release her again with the excuse that the murder was not directed at the public at large, and that Turner was presumed to be innocent because she had not been proven guilty yet.
But okay. What's this guy smoking?
Yeah.
Because somebody needs some of that.
You're supposed to have the presumption of innocence until you've been proven guilty, and this is just an extradition case. This is not the actual murder case. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought is she's possibly, even if it's not proven yet, she's possibly made these kind of trips, which means she's capable of fleeing. So why would you do this? She would
have custody of her son again once out of prison and would get back into the dating game. July 4th, 2003, she would meet a younger guy at a bar in St. John's. They would hit it off and end up having sex a few times, but things would sour when his friends informed him of just who she was and the charges against her. Yeah. I mean, fuck, I can't blame him for piecing out. I know, I sure as hell would have fucked off really fast.
There are people in my past life that have given me an out for far less.
Now, can you guess how Shirley would react, JT? Not that luckily. Luckily, it was not murder, but she did make 200 calls to him, many in a very threatening manner. 200.
If she could just put this motivation to something beneficial in this world, call your representative 200
Could
times.
You also guess she would try to use pregnancy card on him also? Luckily for this unnamed man, time there was no validity to that claim, at first or later.
She's like a walking cliche.
August 18th, 2003, Shirley would have Zachary with her, and she would head off to a pharmacy to fill a prescription for lorazepam, also known as Ativan, a drug used for anxiety. Her and Zachary would head to Conception Bay South, where she would park the car. The car would be staged with photos of the two of them on the seats, as well as a used tampon. It is thought she may have been trying to use the tampon to stage some kind of struggle with blood, but it is not known if she really doctored up the car.
That's so strange.
What she would do, though, is smash up a bunch of the lorazepam and put it into Zachary's formula and feed it to him.
What?
Yeah. Once he was fed, she would also take a lethal dose of the drug herself. She would then strap him into a baby carrier on her chest and take a walk out to the beach and the fishing wharf at Foxtrap Marina. Shirley would jump into the ocean with the mix of drugs and the ocean. Both would die. Her body would be found on the beach by a couple of tourists, with Zachary's body being found only a bit further down the beach. Zachary was only 13 months old.
God. I mean, any age, any person, it doesn't matter. I mean, it sucks, but it's
brutal.
You can't even fight it, you know? Like, that's ridiculous.
As you can guess, shit would hit the fan after her murder-suicide. The doctor that bailed her out would be hit with a $10,000 fine, or 1/3 of the fine levied against the College of Physicians. The doctor would also be forced to go to psychiatric counseling, and in the end would leave Newfoundland for a different province. Out of this horrible situation, there is only a glimmer of hope that came out of it. Kathleen and David would stay in Newfoundland and fight to have the laws changed for dangerous offenders when there are children involved. While ultimately the law that was passed was not what the Bagby family was hoping for, it will definitely protect children more than the current law at the time. The Bill C-464, or Zachary's Bill, would be proposed by the Liberal Member of Parliament Scott Andrews to change the Criminal Code of Canada on October 23, 2009. The bill was passed unanimously in the House of Commons on December 16, 2010. At least children are now safer than they were before 2010, but it is still just so sad that Zachary was murdered by this woman who obviously was not fit to have a child in her care. After this case was finished, Kathleen and David would move back to California and try to live their lives as best they could.
Gosh, yeah, I think she's proven time and time again that this was not for her.
In the end, scholarships would be set up in both Pennsylvania and Newfoundland in the names of Andrew Bagby and his son Zachary. And the money would go to medical students at Excella Health Latrobe Hospital in Pennsylvania and Memorial University in Newfoundland. This is just such a sad case of unnecessary loss, as it was plain to see that Shirley was a danger to the public, let alone herself. There is just no way that she should have been able to have access to her son Zachary without supervision.
I 100%. I mean, if there was ever a case where it was like, this person's not fit to be alone with really anybody, but especially kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
This was it. You know, playing wishy-washy is how people get killed.
But that's my case for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Wow. What a roller coaster.
Yeah, what a shit sandwich, right?
It is indeed a shit sandwich wrapped in a tortilla of... So, well, mine is a little more, I think it's a little broader, but also takes place in Newfoundland, Labrador.
Perfect.
And yes, and so I am calling this Interpreting Norse Code, the Norse and Newfoundland. Yes, so instead of doing a crime per se, I decided to kind of take us into history a little bit as well, because why not? You don't get to study Vikings every day.
Because whatever catches our attention.
Right, and this just happened to be it, you know? Give Newfoundland a quick goog, and you're gonna come up with, hey, see this. And it's usually the Norse. So before I get into the case, I just wanted to say that the beer that I am picking is by the Virginia Beer Company, and it is called Evil Santa, which I thought was going to be a nice kind of welcome into the holidays. It is a spiced milk stout. Good. So we talked a little earlier about the whole coffee thing and me just liking dark coffee, but this is indeed a spiced milk stout. And I will say that, if you like dark beer and it is the season, 'tis the season to be hoppy. Um, this is a good beer for you. It is 7%, and it has a series of very limited variants and things like that, but it is very good. It won the 2020 Brussels Beer Challenge Bronze
Nice.
Winter Ales. So, yeah, they did a good job, and it really is tasty. And it is, again, brewed with cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, and milk sugar. So,
sounds like a joy.
it's yummy. That's my review. It's yummy. All right. So, the saga of Olaf Haroldson, which was written around 151. No other numbers, just 151. Said that too much ale in a man's heart is laid open for all to see, which I thought that was appropriate.
Have another sip of ale here.
Yeah, do it. So all I'm saying is that the puns might float in. Unlike many of your old-timey history teachers, I prefer to bring some levity to the past. I mean, what is the use of being bored while studying amazing topics? And what's the use of yawning or falling asleep while you're learning about the lessons that history teaches us? The more you know.
The more you know. No.
There is one phrase that my father, who's a former captain in the U.S. Navy and military man of over 34 years, so committed. Yeah. There's something he taught me, which is those that fail to understand history are doomed to repeat it.
I wish more people knew that.
Yeah. And I think that's appropriate, as I wrote, I think we've seen a lot of that recently. Yeah. So no one seems to pick out the patterns, as history is a lot like a wavelength. Human behavior has peaks and valleys. Sometimes it's a tad too loud, and sometimes you struggle to hear the lower frequencies. And at times, those frequencies are the most important. You see, sometimes history is a low frequency. It's the hum beneath the narration. It's that obnoxious mouth sound that just won't go away. But maybe, just maybe, there's a point to that. Maybe it's screaming in its own way just to listen to it. There is something important it's trying to tell us. Close encounters, this is something. It means something. But as usual, I'm letting the analogy get away from me. Oops.
Never happens, JT. Never happens.
I won't apologize. For this episode, I'm not going to regale everybody on the location of Newfoundland, Labrador. There's no point really, seeing as it's kind of inconsequential to the story or the topic and how far back I have to go. This is, it's a case that's not really a case, but more of a lesson. So before I get to that, joke time. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
What do you call a Norse god who doesn't draw much attention to themselves?
I don't know.
Loki.
Oh.
And
that made my head Thor.
What do you call the coming of age tale for a Norse god?
I don't know.
A Thorigin story.
Oh
yeah. I digress.
That's good.
So let's do.
What was that? Hella? Was that her name? That was hell of a joke.
Helena of a joke.
That's a Helena of a joke. Yeah.
So let's do just a very, very brief.
Odin, no.
Odin, no. Oh my gosh. So let's just do a brief history of Vikings. And I do mean brief. I know nobody believes me. At this point, nobody believes me. But here we are, and you're stuck with me. So
yeah.
So the Vikings and the Norse, the modern name given to those seafaring people who are mostly from Scandinavia, and that's present-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden.
The Scandinavians.
Yes. So
work.
It's funny. Chef. You did the chef, but there's something about the chef's imitation or voice that makes me want to do it too. So even though everybody understood what you were doing, I wanted to be like work. Because why not?
Yeah, exactly.
So from the late 8th to 11th century, they raided, pirated, traded, and settled throughout Europe. And in that time, they also ventured far distances. Those locations included the Mediterranean, North Africa, the Middle East, and North America. The etymology of Vikings, largely unknown. Around the Middle Ages, it came to mean Scandinavian pirate or raider. Anglo-Saxons used the word Weising. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I didn't find much on it, but Wicing.
Huh. I don't know.
Yeah, and in many old English sources, this translated into the Latin pirata. So around the 18th century Viking revival, it was introduced into modern English, and at this point, it's garnered the romanticized overtones of barbarian warrior or noble savage.
Yeah.
They did go by other names. They did have other names ascribed to them. For instance, Ascomani, which is Ashman because of the ash wood of their boats. Dubgale or Fingale, which is dark and fair foreigners, which was given to them by the Irish. Here we go. Lochlanike, people from the land of lakes, which was given to them by the Gaels. Den, which was given to them by the Anglo-Saxons, and Northman by the Frisians.
Okay. They got lots of names.
They do. They got plenty of names. Everybody's going to ascribe a name when they run into them. So Vikings spoke Old Norse. They made inscriptions and runes. So for most of the time, they followed the Old Norse religion until they later became Christians. You know, the Christians couldn't let good things last. So
Never.
I think one of the biggest things to understand is that a majority of what we know about Vikings today is kind of a big old lie. Of course.
Never happens.
No. So
it's just like North Americans were so nice to indigenous people, right?
Yes, we literally we sat down and played Scrabble with them. Yes, it's what we do. So for instance, horned helmets, apart from a couple of representations, ritual in nature, there's no depictions of helmets. And there has not been a preserved helmet that's been found with horns. So
that's devastating.
Sorry to burst the old bubble, my friend.
I love the helmets.
I know. They're fun to drink out of.
We got to go back in time and fix this.
Yes, we do.
Back to the future.
Marty.
Exactly.
So barbarity. There's this image of wild-eyed, dirty, barbaric savages that pushes through, and it's distorted. While they did have this, as we're going to hear about, it wasn't nearly as long-lasting or as intense as a lot of modern media would have you think. And drinking out of skulls, there's no evidence of it. So they didn't do that either.
Probably horns, but not skulls.
They did. So good. Yes. So there's a poem.
I have a drinking horn.
Yes.
So.
No, you're correct. So there's a poem that talked of heroes drinking from branches of skulls, but that was a misinterpretation and a mistranslation. And it actually referred to drinking horns. But truth is not always stranger than fiction, and people are going to go with what they've been told.
Mm-hmm.
So the Viking Age lasted from the earliest raids in 793 to the last Norman conquest of England in 1066. Normans were descendants of the Vikings who were given feudal overlordship of areas in northern France. They continue to have influence in northern Europe. In addition, and I had no idea about any of this, the Anglo-Saxon King of England, Harold Godwinson, had Dornish ancestors, and two Vikings, not just one, two made it to the throne of England.
Wow.
Sweyn Forkbeard.
I love that fucking name.
and his son, you'll love this one, his son, Nut the Great.
Not the Great.
Admittedly.
Wow. Ladies must have liked him.
Oh, you know it. It was spelled CNUT, but I'm guessing it's Not the Great. Maybe his dad meant that he's not the Great, and they just misspelled it. Maybe he was just kind of.
I think I'm going to be known by Mike the Forkbeard now.
I like it. You're going to have to change your Twitter handle now.
That'd be a great shirt. Mike the Forkbeard now.
Done. Get ready, y'all. It's coming. During their time, Viking navigators opened the road to new lands to the northwest and east. And this included a short-lived settlement in Newfoundland around 1000. So expansion was a huge deal for the Vikings. And there were reasons for that. Perhaps originally began sailing and raiding because of a need to seek out women from foreign lands. So, as a historical misogyny shows, the rich and powerful men had multiple wives and concubines.
Of
course, they somewhat followed polygamy because it's not enough to have one wife. That being said, there may have been a shortage of eligible women for everyone else. I don't know what eligible means, but here we are. You're
Not owned by another man, probably.
right. So your average Viking man had to take some more risks to find women and wealth. How fun!
Yes.
uh, I-
For them.
right, right. A lot worse than Tinder. Well, maybe not. Depends on who you
It's
are.
about as dangerous, probably.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right. Another theory is that Charlemagne wanted to Christianize all pagans, and because religion absolutely always plays a part in the horrible destruction of the old ways, he would either baptize, convert, or execute.
Jesus
Because,
Christ.
I mean, that's what Jesus would do, right? Yeah, he would have done that. That's exactly.
Yeah, he would have had an AR-15, of course.
Right. Totally. So Vikings resisted, wanted revenge, but it's all part of the story. So another theory is that the Vikings waited for Charlemagne's death and then made use of the weakness. And they did that. And they did that well. The other option is that resources could have been scarce and they just wanted to move on. But, before I get to the whole, where does Newfoundland play, really? I told you earlier what Vikings weren't. Let's talk about what they were. In terms of the literature and language, they had their own alphabet and used runestones. Words we use today came from them, and that includes leg, skin, dirt, sky, egg, kid, anger, window, husband, knife, bag, gift, etc. All came from them.
It was a very patriarchal society when they didn't have a word that we now use for woman.
You're not wrong. Now, I will say this list is not it's not an
I'm just kidding.
No, I know, but you're not wrong. So in terms of runestones, they were written built on sound values, and the majority of them are actually found in Sweden. One of the things they're best known for are their ships, and the biggest one's the longship, which was intended for warfare and exploration, and they were designed for speed and agility. They also built other watercraft rarely discussed, like the Nar, which was a merchant vessel. They had what's called a bite ass, which was a spar mounted on the sail that allowed ships to sail against the wind, not always with the wind.
Cool.
So that's pretty sweet. In terms of their social structure, they had three classes: the thralls, which were the lowest ranking class, and they were slaves. You had the carls, which were free peasants, and the jarls, which were aristocracy.
Okay.
Right. And we did speak a little bit about women. And to a degree, it's pretty much what we'd expect. But there are a couple of twists. So most were subordinate to husbands. But while that is the case, free Viking women had independence and rights and seemed to have more freedom than women elsewhere. Relatively, though, that bar is super low about that time.
Yeah, no shit.
But to be honest with you, it's pretty low today, which is kind of fucked up. So
not wrong.
I calls them like I sees them. So women had the right to inherit part of her husband's property upon his death. They also had religious authority, and they were priestesses and oracles, and they were active in art as poets and rune masters and merchants and medicine women. So they did have some good roles. So here's where I stop on the Vikings in terms of like the history. There is so much on them and so little at the same time. It's really ridiculous. It's a lot like this will help everybody understand this. It's like a book on Ted Bundy. If you've read one, unless there's some massive uncovering of facts, you've probably read them all.
Or Egypt, right?
Right, exactly. There's
so much, but so little.
There's only so many ways you can stack some rocks. So there's a lot of the similar, but there is a lot of it. So let's talk about Newfoundland, Labrador, and the Norse, shall we?
We shall.
I'm going to ask you for some pronunciations, sir, because you might know them. I don't.
Okay, I'll try.
Yes. So there's a lot of speculation about Finland and Leoncell Meadows.
Okay.
All right. We'll take it.
Yep.
We'll take it.
Gotta be right.
Everybody who knows French is just like, what the fuck, man?
Tabernacle, motherfucker.
Where were you when I was Googling this stuff? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
The speculation was up until 1960, but we are going to get there. Leoncell Meadows was an archaeological site of a Norse settlement which dates around 1000. It's located in the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Ooh.
So it's widely accepted as evidence of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. In other words, they fucking beat Columbus. So
take that, you little shithead.
fuck you.
Yeah. Someone who was so shitty, even his own country was like,
Right, exactly. So,
and then North America was like, let's have a day about them.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
We were mean to the Italians. Let's give Columbus a day. They'll be happy. Oh,
fuckers.
I know. So it is. It's a French English name, which can be translated as the bay with the grasslands, which is pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I believe it.
Name it like it is.
I'm sure it's beautiful too.
Right. It's got to be better.
That's all it is, I'm sure.
It's got to be better than dildo. That's all I'm saying.
Same province.
Yeah, right. So it's possible that it is a corruption of the French designation Leoncell Meadows, which is the jellyfish cove. So they went a different route. So this is a portion of what the Norse deem Vinland. And it's just a portion, and we'll talk just a little bit about that. So Vinland is known as Vineland or Wineland. Leif Erikson first landed there around 1000, 5 centuries before Christopher Columbus and John Cabot. So this was...
Take that, bugger.
Yeah. So I kind of tried to weasel that in there as much as possible, as you can tell. So this was the name given by Icelandic Norseman Leif Erikson, and it was spelled Winland as early as Adam of Bremen's Descriptio Insularum Aquilonis, written around 1075.
Jeez. A long time ago.
Yes. So this was initially determined to be Vinland because it stood for wine, but some scholars say it was actually a confusion in a homophone and it meant pasture or meadow, which is possible as where they set camp was a little north for grapes, but they also probably traveled south and boom, there you go. Grapes, Bob's your uncle. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Vinland.
Who knows?
So in terms of these trips, there are sagas about this. And there are 2 that have been written about. And no, not Star Wars sagas, although this would be fun about the Vikings. That would be a good time. This is...
I would, yeah.
Right.
Episode 1, please.
Right.
Let's go right now. Actually, let's skip 1 through 3 because they suck. Let's go right to 4.
I wasn't going to say anything, but there you are. So this is...
I fixed it.
Right. Thank you. Straight up edit. We don't even have to cut now. Yeah. This is perfect. The fact that there's 2 sagas is really interesting, and for many reasons. So the first is the Greenlander saga, and the second is Eric the Red saga, and there are discrepancies between the 2, but there are some similarities. And I'm apt to believe the Greenlander saga because Eric's saga was written to support the canonization of Bishop Bjorn Gilson. It was basically... Yeah. So it was an account to accompany beatification, as he was a direct descendant of Thorfinn Karlsefni and Gudrid. I love Norse names.
I was going to say fucking hell.
There are so many consonants together. Gudrid Thorbjorn Nartadir. Datir. It's exactly what it sounds like. Hey, can I just say...
It's probably so far from that,
it's
too.
It's so much fun to pronounce these at 12:30 in the morning. I couldn't do this on a good day during the day. So basically, it seemed like a true story, but it was written with the concept of propaganda. So I'm actually going to go with the Greenlander saga because I feel like that's a little more legit. So the saga describes accidental discovery of the North American Atlantic coast by Bjarni Haroldson, and the 5 expeditions launched 15 years later after that.
The Swedish chef and Bjarni what?
Bjarni Haroldson.
Yes.
Your tongue can't...
Sounds like something the Swedish chef would say.
Right. It's like your tongue can't move. Your jaw has to do all the work, and you just have to close off your throat. Bjarni Haroldson. You're welcome.
We're going to offend someone.
Right. Oh, I know I am. I'm so sorry to whoever I offended. But it's going to happen.
Worth it.
How often do you get to offend the Norse?
It's true.
And not have to pay for it. So the first expedition after Bjarni, who accidentally came within sight, was Leif Erikson. And then he was followed by his siblings, or ultimately by his sister-in-law Gudrid, and her new husband Thorfinn Karlsefni. Leif's brother also went, but he never reached his goal. Thorstein's ship was storm-tossed and returned to Greenland. It's hard without Siri to tell you where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the saga,
come on, Google Maps, tell me where to go.
I know what's wrong with my fucking reception? I'm always roaming. which is funny considering they're Vikings. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't write that. In the saga, the location served as a transshipment station where resources, lumber, and grapes were assembled and destined for Greenland. So, in short, Bjarni Haroldson discovered it when traveling from Norway to visit his father. He managed to reach Greenland, the site of his father's farm, and then he told the overlord, Eric, about the new land he saw. They criticized him for waiting so long to report this because it was years later when he told Eric.
Yeah.
He then returned to Greenland and told the story and inspired Leif Erikson to organize an expedition. He sailed, he found an island just offshore, he landed and established a base which can now be traced to Leoncell Meadows. His brother Thorvald thought he didn't do much there, so Thorvald set out in the autumn after his brothers returned with one ship and 40 men. He stayed over 3 winters because he obviously goes harder in the paint.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's obviously more extreme.
And they get some real serious winters there. Real serious.
Do they? Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. So he explored the west coast of the new land during the first summer and the east coast during the second. He did run aground and lost the ship's keel, which they ended up dubbing that location as Keel Point. So, take that point. They did encounter local inhabitants that they called Skrælings, and they did kill them at that point. So Skraeling was just the name Norse Greenlanders gave the folks that they encountered in North America. It kind of first applied to the Thule people who were Proto-Inuit. They coexisted with the Norse in Greenland after about the 13th century. It's also used, as mentioned in the sagas, in the location known as Vinland. The etymology is likely related to the Old Norse skara, meaning dried skin, which referenced the animal pelts that they wore. So, back to the saga, Thorstein, Leif's brother, married Gudrid, who was a widow of a captain that Leif rescued on the way back from Vinland. And that gave him the name Leif the Lucky, because people were lucky to find him. He then led a third...
I believe it.
Yeah. If you're floating around in the water, pretty fucking lucky. So he then led a third expedition to bring home Thorvald, who actually died in Vinland, but drifted off course and spent the whole summer sailing in the Atlantic. Thorstein died of disease, and then Gudrid married a visiting Icelander named Thorfinn Karlsefni a winter later, and then he agreed to undertake a massive expedition to Vinland, and he took livestock with him. When they arrived, they found a beached whale, which gave them enough to survive on until spring.
That makes sense, yeah.
It's a weird sentence to write, because you never think about that, but here we are.
No. Hey, whatever, right? Food's food.
Right. So they were visited the following summer by the local folk who were scared by the Greenlanders' bull, but they did trade goods for milk and kind of some other stuff as well. One of my favorite parts of the story is that one of the locals picked up an iron axe and he tried it, he threw it, and then he was like, fuck it. And he just threw it away, threw it on the ground and walked away. He was like, I don't need this shit.
Wow.
The best. I love it. It's like a kid today who's just like, I've got my phone in my head. Like, and they look at yours and they're just like, forget it. Don't need it. Yeah. Eventually, there was kind of a lot of inside drama, Vinland Shore style, if you will. So a ship captained by 2 ice...
The Vinland Shore.
The Vinland Shore.
Yeah, the Vinland Shore.
Yep. GTL. I don't know what it stands for. I mean, I know it's Jim Tan Laundry, but I was trying to think of something like Vikings.
I don't know.
A ship captained by 2 Icelanders who were brothers arrived in Greenland. Freydis, the daughter of Eric the Red, persuaded them to join her in Vinland. They arrived and the brothers stored belongings in Leif Erikson's houses. They angered Freydis and she banished them. She visited them, though, during the winter and asked them for a ship because she wanted to go back to Greenland. And the brothers said, yep, because what the hell, she banished them. Get the hell out. Like, go away.
Yeah.
Freydis went back and told her husband the opposite of everything that had happened. But this led to the killing at Freydis' order, including 5 women as they lay sleeping. The Greenlanders returned home with cargo, but Lee found out the truth of all that happened, and that was it. That was the end of it. No more going over there.
Jeez.
Right. So, in terms of the discovery of this location in 1960, this went from 1960 to 1968. So the remains of Norse buildings were discovered in Newfoundland by Norwegian husband-wife team explorer Helga Instad and archaeologist Anne Stein Instad. Before the theories they had, there was common thought that the Vinland region existed south of the northern Massachusetts coast, but the U.S. isn't that cool.
No.
It was a false assumption due to the mention of grapes, and that kind of threw folks off. Wild grapes had grown and still grow along the coast of New Brunswick and in the St. Lawrence River Valley of Quebec. So they doubted the hypothesis, and they said, quote, that the name Vinland probably means land of meadows and includes a peninsula. So in 1960, a citizen of a small fishing hamlet led them to mounds near the village. The locals called this the, quote, old Indian camp, and it kind of looked like the remains of houses. Helga and Anne carried out 7 archaeological excavations there from 61 to 68. They found remains of 8 buildings and the remains of maybe a 9th. Now, as I was looking this up, one of the coolest things that I found was a recent article, which literally was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So around the 3rd week of October this year, researchers were able to pinpoint the date of this location.
No way.
Quote, the explorers, up to 100 people, both women and men, felled trees to build the village and to repair their ships. And the new study fixes a date they were there by showing they cut down at least 3 trees in the year 1021, at least 470 years before Christopher Columbus reached the Bahamas in 1492. So
that's amazing. And also, how the fuck do they do that? That is amazing science.
I know it's crazy to me, but the fact that I was able to that popped up when I started researching this, I was just so excited. I was like, oh, here it is.
Yeah, we need Bill Nye or what's that other guy's name? Tell us how this works.
Did you guys ever have Beekman's World?
Nope. Oh, I didn't.
Oh man, Beekman's World was like the poor man's Bill Nye. He did science in a sewer with a big old human-sized mascot rat. It was hysterical. It's exactly what it sounds like. So archaeologist Margot Quitems, researcher at University of Groningen in the Netherlands, said, quote, this is the first time the date has been scientifically established. Previously, the date was based only on sagas, oral histories that were written down in the 13th century, at least 200 years after the events they described took place. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, it really is.
So the Norse had a northern base, but it is believed they also may have had a summer, early fall camp farther south. We mentioned Leoncell Meadows. Every time I think I know how it's said, I have to remind my mouth, you have to basically do the what the fuck did I just say? And you've got it. But another location they may have been in was Miramichi area of New Brunswick. Its location and layout differ from, we're back in Leoncell. The location and layout differ from other sites that they have found from the Norse, but this could have had something to do with a wildly different place that they were at. It required something different. It had 8 buildings clustered into 4 complexes. 3 were dwelling compounds, each with a large hall and a small hut. One also included a small house. They are all lined up, evenly spaced on a narrow, curving terrace. I think it's amazing to me that they were able to do all of this. I'm not saying that they were dumb. Yeah. They're smart people. They knew how to work and evolve right away, real quick. But, I mean, just the perfection is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It is, yeah.
It's hard enough to get perfection now. Do you know what I mean?
And we have a lot more technology. We've got, surveying equipment that uses satellites and everything. Yeah.
We have the tools. We just also have the laziness. Also, people don't get paid enough like they should. So there's that. We're not getting into this. We're going to leave that alone. They found remnants of woodworking, ironworking, and more. They think this had much to do with repairing ships or anything like that. They found a small bronze pin, a glass bead, a minute fragment of gilded bronze, which was an ornament, a spindle whorl, a small whetstone for the sharpening of needles, and a bone needle. And that's how they knew it wasn't just a sausage fest and that women were there as well.
Yeah.
All right. Unless there was a really interesting guy, Hergeberger, who did all the sewing. But I doubt it.
Yeah. Swedish chef's cousin, right?
Swedish chef in the kitchen. Hergeberger is out over by the spindle. Is perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's Jim Henson. Hit me up.
From the grave.
Yeah. There was a finished Norse object deliberately left on the site. It was a small beach boulder of igneous rock with a shallow depression, basically pecked out of its center. And those objects have been found in Iceland and have been interpreted as oil lamps. So overall, the settlement was large, and it had major activities on the site. Like I mentioned, carpentry, iron, manufacturing, smithing, and textile working. In terms of like leaving and stuff, right? So present day folks just don't understand why the Norse gave up on Vinland as soon as they found it. Because obviously, our continent's the best. Yay, ethnocentrism. But
Yeah.
basically, the bottom line is that the incentive for a permanent colony wasn't there. And they were kind of a little more practical back then. So they were missing flour and, good lumber for buildings and boats. They would have required sailing to Greenland and other places to get it. It wasn't the best situation. And in order to obtain stuff after sailing, if they were committed to that, they would have had to have something to trade. Right. And what they had there was walnuts, grape, and lumber, but it wouldn't have been useful in this situation because everybody else had that stuff. The only stuff they were really able to trade was walrus and narwhal tusks and products from seals and other sea mammals. So, despite any of this, Vinland wasn't ever forgotten. They kept talking about this. The Danish king, the then ruler of Iceland at the turn of the 17th century, used the memory of the explorations to boost his claim for the North American territory. It didn't really mean much in the end, but it did renew interest in the Vinland sagas. It continues to be discussed later on. And of course, just like Curse of Oak Island, everyone wants answers, except in the case of Vikings, they actually got some.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Because it's real.
Right. So, all in all, that's the Norse code. Again, there's a lot there. And I'd encourage anybody to look it up, or watch something on it if you're interested. So, with the end of this story, I leave you with a hearty yarg.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to end that story. So those are the Norse in Canada.
Well, I just looked, just because I wasn't 100% sure. I knew they got a lot of snow in Newfoundland and Labrador. Mm-hmm. They get 322 centimeters of snow, which is 127 inches of snow per winter.
No thanks.
Yeah.
The fascinating part about...
On average.
Right. The fascinating part about these buildings is that they are mounds, but they're underneath are the buildings. So either the earth moved around that much, or they did indeed dig out these buildings, right? I'd love to do more research on it. Obviously, there was it's a cursory glance. I feel like even if you spend your life studying the Norse, it's a cursory glance.
Yeah, for sure.
It's one of those places where you dig a hole, but then you just keep going,
Yeah, you could spend years studying hundreds of years.
Accurate. Or
without any real sources.
Or right. Or really just hundreds of years studying a year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's true. Wild. So, yarg. That's what I say to you all. Yarg. A healthy yarg.
Well, thanks for tuning in to Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you would like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. Money goes towards upgrading equipment, making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters. True Crime Nana, Three Beers In Podcast, Amber, and the Faves of Our Lives. Cheers.
Yarg.
And we hope you enjoy next month's daily hoppy holiday episodes. We've had a lot of fun doing it, and you better enjoy it, damn it.
Yes, check out the videos. I'm putting those together now. You'll love them.
Or else.
Or else, exactly. I'll go all Viking on you.
Yeah, we'll send the Norse after you.
Yeah, it was basically a study. It was a deep study. I'm a method actor. It's fine.
Absolutely.
All right, bye.
Bye. All cases in Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
We're actually ahead of where I thought we'd be.
So am I.
I didn't know where we were going to be.
Especially with that added episode. I'm like, there's no way we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Yep. As Hoppins, a registered the drive from her home to
come into him or come
come into them.
Probably about the old north. So that happened between 10:13 and 10:35.
Not the JT. No. Back metal.
Not as good. Not as good. I mean, I am.
No.
Listen,
not as good.
I am the new guy. I'll take whatever beating I have to. So it's fine. Whatever.
That was terrible.
The cheesy. Oh boy. Oh.
Jesus Christ.
We've got half the listeners that are like, "Oh my god," and we've got other half that are like, "Okay," which is fine. Leaf's brother also went, but he never. I almost went the other route. I'm gonna get it right. Helga and Anne then carried out 7 archaeological words.